look at your sales process and identify are you selling the logistics of a paint job? Like, well, we're doing great prep and we're applying 2 coats of great product and we're reinstalling them. Or are you selling the experience and the feelings that come with that kitchen renewal, right? Like, people buy feelings and experiences. Any painter is going to come in and just be like, well, yeah, we're going to just do the same logistics, right? So you need to separate yourself in terms of like the sales experience so you have more perceived value.
When your leads are low and your sales are slow, who you gonna call? Brushbuster. Scaling up the game. Big projects, friend.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Brushbusters. We got Coach Gavin here and Coach Jesse, and we're going to be walking through a few letters today and help you solve some problems. What's going on, Gav?
Man, it's been an awesome day. Had some incredible calls with people implementing and seeing some big wins. And I get fired up when I start to, people start to see the wins and 5x their lead flow over the last 3 weeks. So that got me super fired up.
Wow. Who? What? You don't have to say the person's name. How many 5x? So how many leads are they generating on a weekly basis now compared to where they were? And what was the how did they do it?
I mean, when he initially came in, he was generating, it varied significantly between 2 and I think max 9 leads a week. And then over the last 3 weeks, he implemented a door-to-door team. So he absolutely nailed that. And his lead flow went from on average, I'd say 4 leads a week to 20 plus leads a week consistently now for the last 3 weeks. So
that's awesome.
He just decimated his lead flow constraint.
that's seriously life-changing numbers, right? When you're sitting around, something I always like to say is like when you don't have leads, you really don't have a business.
No, it prevents you from getting better at sales. It prevents you from producing work. Like it is the biggest constraint, right? We on that call we were chatting about like if you maintain this lead flow, and now we're working on the next challenge of like keeping the slippage low and making sure he's turning all those into estimates and sales, which I'm very confident he's going to nail. In a few more weeks of this, like we're going to be recalibrating his goal to be like 50 or 60% higher than his like original goal for the year, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. I love it. I think that is, you look at some of the biggest companies out there, like telecom companies, and like they literally, these multi-billion-dollar companies still have door-to-door sales teams going out there and whatnot. It's a foundation I built my entire
all of my businesses have been built off of that. Like in my pressure washing, house detailing company. Well, same with my painting businesses as well. Like we really didn't touch online marketing for the first several years. We just dominated that one thing and did it really, really, really well. And that's really what you need to do for marketing, honestly. Choose like 1 or 2 things and just do it really, really well. Don't do 8 or 9 things poorly. It's just like
100%.
shiny object syndrome. Investing like a tiny amount of time and money into like a wide variety of things that may or may not work. Like stuff that we teach and have systems for, like it's not theory. Like I've done just over $10 million over the last 15 years in my career in home services. I'd say 60% of that is from door to door.
That's crazy. That is a crazy stat.
Yeah.
It's so funny because you're just like cherry picking the jobs in the neighborhoods you want to go to, right? You're just going after and getting it. The reason why it works so well too is just because most people aren't willing to do it.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. We got some letters, and sorry for everyone if there's some background birds chirping. Yeah, I'm sitting on a rooftop patio here. So let's get into it.
vibes.
We got a letter here from Frank from London, Ontario. So I own Brilliant Painting and Renos. So this is Frank actually in our PG community. So
Yes, it is.
what's up,
I
Frank?
work with Frank.
Awesome. Specializing in high quality painting and kitchen cabinet refinishing. We have a great reputation, but I struggle to close deals despite steady leads. Many clients hesitate due to pricing, not pushing enough, and I want to improve my sales process to convert more inquiries to book jobs. And he called out here, my main issues are closing deals. So again, he's calling out, I'm generating leads through social media, referrals, and ads, but I struggle to close deals. Many prospects say they love our work, but are hesitant to commit, often citing price concerns. How can I improve my closing rate and confidently handle objections without discounting too much? The next one, he said, pricing perception. I've received feedback that our kitchen cabinet repaints at 176 per door and drawer seem high. Yet I've still landed some jobs at this, right? How can I position my pricing so clients see the value and don't immediately compare me to cheaper, lower quality competitors? And then the third one he says is sales process efficiency. I feel like I'm spending too much time on estimates and follow-ups without enough conversions. What are some proven strategies or scripts to streamline the sales process, book more jobs faster, and avoid getting ghosted after sending a quote? Frank, I love the amount of detail you've given here for us to go on. There's a lot here to chew on and whatnot. So, but yeah, I love all the context and everything. Frank, let's dive into this and see if we can get
Let's dive in. Let's go one
closing
by
more
one
deals.
here.
All right, kick us off.
So let's just go in order. So closing deals. I struggle to close deals. Many prospects say they love our work, but hesitate to commit, often citing price concerns. How to improve closing rate, confidently handle objections without discounting too much. I mean, step number one is like take discounts out of the question. Because as soon as you say, oh yeah, well, I can give you a discount, you're basically saying, well, I know I'm very expensive and I have a lot of wiggle room for you, right? You need to be rock solid in your pricing, which does lead to your second question, which we'll visit here in a second. But I would say, like, I mean, a lot of these kind of lump together is look at your sales process and identify, like, are you selling the logistics of a paint job? Like, well, we're doing great prep and we're applying 2 coats of great product and then we're reinstalling them. Or are you selling the experience and the feelings that come with that kitchen renewal, right? Like, people buy feelings and experiences. Any painter is going to come in and just be like, well, yeah, we're gonna just do the same logistics, right? So you need to separate yourself in terms of like the sales experience, so you have more perceived value, right? I think that's kind of like, without diving too much into your current sales process and having more information there, like, yeah, area of opportunity for sure. And then in terms of pricing, like, know what you're worth, charge it, and then find customers who are willing to pay that, right? So in my house detailing business, we were absurdly expensive compared to most others in the industry. We had one other competitor that was kind of near our pricing, but for the most part, we were 50% to double the cost of our competitor. The difference is we were, we were branded as a premium brand. We acted like a premium brand. We delivered a premium brand experience, right? This let us charge $110 an hour to clean gutters, like no product, like straight up labor. That's it. Because we were very, very clear on who our customers were and who they weren't. Our customers were the ones who were willing to pay a premium to make sure that there weren't issues, because their time is worth so much. They're willing to pay that extra 50% because we just put them at ease, and they knew by hiring us, we were reassuringly expensive. That term came up several times. In the sense of like, how could they have issues if they're costing this much?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
having
So
similar
I
conversations.
can,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
yeah, I can hop in as well. I would just say, Frank, the first place that I would ask Frank, and just to make sure that we have all the basics and fundamentals taken care of here, is there's about 10 steps in the what we call the pre or the lights out setup call, and say, are you hitting every single one of those 10 steps? If you go look back at your 10 estimates, go audit yourself and say, did I actually hit all these 10 steps? And then when you go to the estimate, we call it doing a perfect estimate, and there's about 10 steps there as well. roughly speaking. And did you actually hit every single step in that process? And just go back and audit the last 10 that you've done and say, a score out of 20, where would I rate myself here on this? When I would do this, even after doing thousands of estimates, and when I would audit it, if I'm consistently doing estimates over time, something happens where I can get sloppy, right? And I think I'm hitting all the steps in the process and whatnot. But I went audit myself, and it was like 55 or 60%, and I wonder why I wasn't closing work. It's because I was just missing the fundamentals and steps in place. So I'd say go back and just audit yourself. Are you actually hitting all those steps? That would be your first plan of action there. And then I just want to echo what you said there of, because the way Frank phrased this is without discounting too much. It's like, well, just like you don't discount. Like this is your price. This is your pricing, right? And now that's not to say that you can't work with people and like get deals done, right? Like I think that's there's a little bit of like sales EQ here, right? And by that I mean emotional intelligence. Like you can read the room and read if there's a situation or a discount. But anytime if you are off, I always try to, number one, try to go for bonuses first, right? What can I add as a bonus instead of a discount on that, Frank? And then number two, anytime in the event that I would offer a discount, I'm always getting something in return for that discount, right? So if I'm going to give you 10% off, I'm also going to negotiate that I can leave a sign here for the entire summer, on your lawn. I'm going to negotiate that we can be flexible in the timeline. If it's an interior job, then, hey, are you willing to be called a few days beforehand if you have a rain week,
for a rain day, right? Or something like that?
Yeah. So if you're ever going to do that, you got to get something in return. You never just give discounts for nothing, right? And also too, that what I found is the times that I did give discounts with nothing in return and whatnot, always the worst customers.
Totally.
Like they would just take advantage of me over and over and over again, right? So again, just to recap that for Frank is like audit your sales process right from when that lead first came in. Are you hitting those 10 steps? Then in the perfect estimate, are you hitting those 10 steps? The other thing that I would say as well is when you say you're getting a ton of leads, and I would be really interested in your closing rate and how it compares from the social media to referrals versus your ads as well, because each one of those lead sources, you have to treat them very differently. Or an inbound social media lead versus a paid ad lead versus a door-to-door lead versus a direct mail lead. They're all significantly different people. Let's take a Facebook lead, for example, right? Someone's scrolling, probably on the bathroom, probably in the toilet, and they're scrolling and they're looking at photos of their family. And then they see, hey, that kitchen remodel looks great. We've been kind of thinking about maybe kitchen remodel. Yeah, I want a free quote. And then they submit it and they go on and carry on and do their business. And they totally forgot that they even submitted to get that free quote. And so on those, like the speed to lead is the most important thing ever, because if you can call that person right as they're washing their hands, then it's still on their mind. They're still thinking about it, right? Versus a door-to-door lead is you're going to hunt the lead, and it's going to be colder in general, right? It's like it's a cold call lead that you have to follow the process to a T, like those 10 steps in the light setup call, 10 steps in the estimate to have any chance of booking those jobs, because those people aren't really like, they weren't even thinking about it. And then you went and knocked on their door and they're like, oh, maybe. Like you really got to get that dialed in. And then versus a referral lead. I mean, referral leads are the biggest layups of all time. You could, for the most part, just show up and wherever the referral came from, you're probably going to book that job, right? So look at your close rate from the lead source, and it would also tell you a lot of information as well. Anything to add on those points, Gav?
No, I mean, just getting deeper in the analysis for sure. And Frank, I know you use Drip Jobs, and Drip Jobs does a great job of that, tracking metrics by lead source. So we're solving the right problem, right? Because if referrals are happy to pay, right, your closing rate's 60%, 70% on referrals, but your Facebook ads are 10% closing rate, that's a targeting issue to me. You're attracting the wrong types of people. Or you're just, speed to lead is not there, like that type of thing. So we just need to find that gap. So we're solving the correct problem. Generalizing all customers as one group is not the most accurate way to do this, for sure.
Yeah, love it. Let's go into the second part when Frank talked about pricing perception.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that he might be on a bit of the higher end and whatnot. The first thing I would say on this is like, that's where you want to play.
Totally.
Like that's where you want to play. Like first and foremost is, if they went and got 10 quotes, I like to be like on like 6 and 7 in terms of like pricing, right? Like definitely not the most expensive, definitely not the cheapest, but somewhere a bit above middle. so that I can deliver a 13 what I call a 13 out of 10 experience, and I'm still, fairly priced but more expensive, where I can still hit my 45 to 50% gross margins on that. And we can take this a couple different ways. I mean, let's touch on it, like value-based selling, right? Is kind of what you're talking about before, of like of the experience. But we can go a little deeper, especially with specializing in either high quality finishes or kitchen cabinet repainting. I mean, the first thing I didn't actually sell. I just subcontracted, or I had a referral partnership with a cabinet guy when I was running my painting company, because I was specialized in other paints. Like, the more that I think about on the spot though, like, how much time does someone spend in their kitchen?
Totally. Tons.
And right, like, so much time.
Like, if you ever having a gathering or an event, like people congregate in the kitchen, right?
They congregate in the kitchen. You have, you're generally making breakfast, lunch, and dinner in that area. It's an area that you're kind of just hanging out within the day. It's, and then if you're sitting there and you're looking at these nasty, oak cabinets that are from like the 1970s and whatnot, versus, that when we transform it, new kitchen cabinets can make the entire house feel brand new, right? Like from that. And so, like what you're talking about, how would you, like, if you were Frank and you were going to a customer's house and you're looking at these cabinets, knowing what they can be and showing the transformation, like, how would you approach enrolling them in the vision that they have for themselves in that experience?
I mean, first of all, I get them just be really clear. Like, how do they currently make you feel?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I hate going to my kitchen. It's kind of depressing. Cool. I get that for sure. How do you want it to make it feel? Like, what do you like when you walk into your kitchen? What's the vibe you want? Have them like paint you a picture. Actually, that was a great term I used, even for like exteriors and stuff. Like, paint me a picture to like what you're looking for here and like how you want this to feel, and then just shut up. And then they'll tell you exactly how they want to feel. So then now you can sell to that, right? Yeah, let the customer tell you. Don't assume.
Yeah, so they tell you, like, oh, it'd be amazing that when we host people, like, I'm actually proud of my kitchen and I'm excited to have people in here, versus feeling, kind of ashamed from it. So you're going to take that information, and then later on, hey, when we're finished here and you're hosting, when are you guys hosting your next gathering?
Yeah, I was just about to say, ask
Right.
when they're hosting their next gathering, because then
Right.
that can help put urgency on it, right?
Yeah.
And then paint a very, very clear picture of how
Yeah.
amazing it's going to feel when they're in their kitchen
Yeah.
prepping for that event or that gathering, and people are coming in and complimenting them and noticing that they like the energy has changed, it's twice as bright, like that type of thing. Like, paint that picture for them so they get
Yeah.
emotionally invested in that.
Yeah.
It's not just putting paint on cabinets.
And I think with kitchen cabinet repainting as well, having and you could do this like super easily, like go get an old kitchen cabinet door,
Yep, a
and
bunch of my clients have like
right,
samples and demos.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
bring those and actually have them experience of like those old cabinets to what it'll look like and whatnot. Then that they get so much more emotionally invested at that point, right?
Totally. Yeah. Something else that comes to mind, because I actually work with several clients that specialize in cabinets and whatnot. Is like, what, when you're giving them a quote, so say it's like $7,000 to refinish their whole kitchen. That's a lot of work, first of all. Like, what are they then comparing that $7,000 to? Not doing it, or doing it themselves? Okay, that's a lot of money. But comparing it to completely redoing the kitchen and like getting new cabinets, which is about general consensus, about 10 times the cost, suddenly that seems like a deal, right?
Yeah.
A really good analogy that I came up with, because I've had this conversation a few times. So, like, if I told you I had a 1982 Honda Civic hatchback and it was only 30 grand, what would you say, Jesse? Not a great deal, right?
It doesn't seem like a good deal. I don't know much about that car or anything, but it seems
No, terrible deal.
like a terrible deal. Yeah.
Go away. Why would I buy that?
Yeah.
If I told you I had a 2025 Lamborghini Aventador, all the add-ons, and it was only 30 grand, what would you say?
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How fast can I sign that check or give you my credit card?
Yeah.
Right. So then how do you become the Lamborghini? Right. A lot of people are presenting them like, first of all, what's the difference? They're both cars. They both have
Yep.
4 wheels and a steering wheel and an engine. They both get you from A to B. Honestly, the Honda Civic probably more reliably than the Lamborghini. Let's be honest. But like, what is the difference? It's the vibe and the energy and like the feelings around that luxury brand,
Yep.
right? That's all it is. There's more perceived value in a Lamborghini. How do you present yourself as a Lamborghini, not the Honda Civic?
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. There was one story. Do you know Russell Brunson?
Yeah.
So the ClickFunnels guy and whatnot, and he went on stage and he said, here's my iPhone, which an iPhone, he's like, costs whatever, $1,000. And he goes, who would buy this from me right now for 10,000? Not a single person put up their hand, right? And then Russell said, okay, now remember my cell phone, I have 850 contacts on the cell phone. I have Tony Robbins' cell phone number. I have like Oprah's cell number. I have, all these people and whatnot. And then someone in the audience puts up their hand. They're like, I'll give you $1 million right now. Right. And so that's what we're talking here. When you're selling, it's like, what are you, like, Frank, how are you, like Gavin said, how are you the Lamborghini, or what is the value add that you're adding that is creating that experience for those people that they're just like, they're not even looking at the competitors, like be so good that they don't even look at competitors.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of that could be like the pre-sales too. Like one thing we always did quite well and in my business was like, I just set myself up for the sale on the spot, did everything I could to pummel value into them and just, show that we're just dialed, we're organized leading up to that. So then we could close them on the spot, because that's the most efficient, to get to your third point, sales process efficiency, close them on the spot as much as possible. So obviously, that requires presenting on the spot, objection handling, but then just priming them for that sale. Because as soon as people get into the follow-up process, now you're chasing them, right? 10, 12, 15 times just to get an answer. So
I pretty much went in with the mindset, if I don't book this on the spot, if they end up booking afterwards, it's kind of a bonus.
Totally.
Like that was always my mindset. It's like, I got to do everything possible to have them book on the spot. And if they don't book on the spot, the odds that I book them in, like, I don't even bank on those odds at all. And again, it just feels like a bonus when they do book in and whatnot. So if you want to streamline your entire process here and whatnot, is because there's nothing, and I experimented with this a little bit because I was always booking on the spot. And then I'm like, well, if I ran my numbers faster and then I just sat down at the end of the day and I just pumped out like 10 emails in a day or 10 quotes in a day, would doing that volume, replace, instead of being able to do 3 or 4 quotes in a day, could I do 10? And I experimented with this, right? And I can confidently say that, going there, getting the numbers, then sitting down like at a coffee shop afterwards, typing up that quote and whatnot. Number one, it actually took me 4 times longer to type up that quote, because I then had to put myself back in the space. I didn't have any of the context of the customer, the pictures, it ended up taking me way, way more time to do that. So I just found it way more efficient, both time-wise and whatnot, when, you finish a walk around. And if it's an interior, to build even more rapport, hey, do you mind if I just sit at the kitchen table and just type up this quote for you? And then just have, then usually having a coffee there, chatting with them as I'm like doing my numbers and doing the photos and everything and chatting with them. It makes the rapport so easy, but it also is so much more faster in your time, because you're at the house, the customer's needs, you can add all that relevant information for the quote, and then you answer all the questions that they may have right then and there. It's not this back and forth and then text message and then trying to find a call. It's like, you just handle it all right then and there. And if you can get that process to, about 60 to 90 minutes, and that is dialed in, like, that is going to be the most efficient and effective use of your time. Because if you just bank on, I'll just get the numbers, I'll have a quick chat with them, and then I'll send them, like, you're going to get ghosted probably 6 times out of 10, just purely ghosted on that.
Pose an answer or a question, sorry, to the listeners. When was the last time you bought a $7,000 thing from an email? I haven't.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
If you send an email and it's like $7,000 without context, What are they comparing it to?
So wait, you're telling me you're going to charge me $7,000 and you're not even going to take the time to go over this and tell me what I'm getting and not getting and how it actually looks?
Yeah.
That's crazy, actually.
Like the nuances, and then like actually
Right?
providing the value and like just telling them like how much is involved. Because remember, the average homeowner, they're not educated as to what's involved, particularly like the preparation and logistics and stuff, right? Like they think you're just coming in with a can of spray paint and coating everything. Like that's it. Like that's not worth $7,000. That's worth $2,000.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're telling them that you're bringing, Frank, I know you have a spray shop, telling them how you're disassembling them, carefully transporting them to a professional spray shop with a booth. So they're not getting chemicals in their home. So their kids and dogs and pets aren't getting sick from the VOCs. You have a controlled environment for a perfect finish. Here's a sample. Here's a sample compared to like a crappy IKEA cabinet, like that type of thing, right?
Or a rolling finish.
Or yeah,
exactly. Right. When you ask if a lot of the competitors are coming in earlier, I guarantee you they're probably just rolling it right. Like they're probably rolling it, not spraying it out in a professional shop.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people do cabinets very poorly.
I mean, that's why when I ran my painting company, we never did cabinets because I never set up for it, right?
Because it's a specialized service to do it properly.
Yeah, it's super specialized.
Yeah. So,
all right.
I mean, lots
I think there's lots to unpack there, Frank. You know where to reach us. We can go deeper on this with you, but again, go over every step by step of the process, right from the lights out setup call all the way through to the end. Make sure you're pitching on the spot. But really, I think the big thing that will make the biggest difference for you is selling the feelings and selling the experience of how unreal it's going to be the next time they're hosting an event and they're so proud of their home and their kitchen and how it looks, and it happened to get done in 2 or 3 days. That's crazy.
Totally. Yeah. One last thing I just want to circle back around to super quick before we go on to our next letter is, and this is something I notice a lot of people that they are presenting on the spot or just going home and emailing. They're doing that because they're trying to save time doing their estimates quicker, right? They're trying to save that 15, 30 minutes on site. But in reality, long-term, that's actually costing you 3, 4, 5 times the amount of time because now you're playing phone tag and emails and you have those big email threads and you have to do more estimates for the same amount of sales, right? Because your closing rate's lower. It's like simply by planning out your time, making sure you have enough time to do a proper estimate. You're not going there with 30 minutes. You have 90 minutes or 2 hours blocked off so you can do the actual process. It will save you time in the long run. Because I know a lot of my clients struggle with that. Is like short-term, a little bit of time sacrifice for long-term, large amounts of time saved.
Well, and the other thing that we're calling out too here is that it's actually you're probably faster doing it on the spot because you're in that headspace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So it's just something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's
awesome.
let's rock and roll. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, you want to read out?
Yeah. So we got Mary from Bellevue. Hey guys, I need some advice on handling clients who delay payments. We recently completed a $2,300 job for a business owner who needed it done before his lease ended. Everything went fine until it came to pay. After the work was done, he suddenly mentioned that he had to process the payment through his company's accounting system. It's been almost 2 weeks now and I haven't seen a dime. I'm not sure if he's just stalling or if it's a legitimate delay. Either way, I feel like he should have been upfront from the start. I told him that late fees would kick in after 14 days. Does that seem fair? How do you handle situations like this? Great question. Jesse.
Really good. Really good question. I think I would just ask, what's the expectation that you set with him right from the beginning?
Yeah.
Right. One 100%. Thing that, going back to the sales and estimate process we're just chatting about with Frank, but it's, you explain that. So part of the estimate process is you explain that. I explained that probably 4 times throughout the estimate process, that our process is it's just a 20% deposit. And then we don't collect final payment until the full walk around. And we collect final payment on that, on the last day
upon completion.
Yeah. Upon completion. Like that's just how we keep our, what's called accounts receivable, like the amount of money that people owe you, way tighter. I think that especially with credit cards and stuff now. Like I think it's very easy to get really sloppy and say, yeah, I'll just you close up the job, everything is good, and then you'll say, yeah, I'll send over the invoice later, and then you expect um, payments and whatnot. I think that the reason why we always collect a payment right then and there when the job is closing, that's part of the SOPs, you collect that final payment, is because when you do that full walk around and you say, we're going to do any touch-ups right here and there, if you give somebody 7 days or you give them 14 days and they casually are walking around their home or their office is way more, it's like they're going to be nitpicking every little detail as well, versus when they make that final payment, the transaction is complete, and it's like in their mind they're like, oh, the job's actually done. There's actually a big psychological factor here.
100%.
Versus if they have that outstanding payment, they still have technically power over you to be like, oh, you know what, I actually saw 6 touch-ups that you need, and then you have to spend time to get your crews back there, you have to spend time back there again, and it adds so much time and complexity to the thing. So the number one thing that I would say here is part of your initial estimate process is you talk about how payment works, which is a deposit up front and then final payment upon completion of the job. And then the next one is it's part of your SOP in your closing process. So you always collect payment on the spot, even if it is by credit card. Great. We did all the touch-ups. I'm going to send you the final invoice now. We'll sign off on it as the crew's packing up. And as they're packing up, then you take care of the payment and Google review and everything that you need to do there. That's kind of, outside of this acute situation that Barry's going through, that's what I would put in place in terms of standard operating procedures there.
After the work was done, he suddenly mentioned that he had to process the payment through his company's accounting system. It's been almost 2 weeks now, and I haven't seen a dime. I'm not sure if he's just stalling or if it's a legitimate delay. Either way, I feel like he should have been upfront from the start. I told him that late fees would kick in after 14 days. Does that seem fair? How do you handle situations like this? Yeah, one thing to add there is absolutely put this in writing on your proposals too. Like your proposals should have a section that says payment terms, and then it has very clear payment terms.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So this is documented expectation, and this is where I find a lot of people really struggle is actually setting expectations up of their clients. Like, this is what I expect of you as a client. So their clients just tend to walk all over them. Right. Not saying that's the case here, right? So again, we don't know if you set those expectations ahead of time. But from this specific situation, let's all learn, like, okay, if we're getting the indication that this is being processed through a business, right? We need to have that very clear conversation. Cool. So given that this is your business, I usually collect payment once the job is complete. Is that going to be doable? Do you have a business credit card that we can charge through? Yes. Okay, awesome. Because then they can't play that game of like, oh, I got to, I own the business, but I can't make that payment. I have people to do that for me, right? They're also balancing their cash flow, and they're using you as a credit source.
I think that's such a good point here, right? When somebody says, and I'm pretty sure Mary used the exact words that the people, I have to run it through our accounting system. What does that mean? Like, you own a business, you have a credit card, or you have, whatever it is. It's just like, that is you got to read between the lines of what's going on here, right?
For sure. Now, there's a caveat to this, such as, for example, if you're working with property managers or general contractors and stuff like that, very rarely do you get paid upon completion. And that's just, again, this needs to be, you need to know what their payment terms are. And quite often they will dictate that, because, I've worked with countless property managers. They do specific pay runs where they have all their accounts payable and they run checks in batches at the end of the month, right? So you need to know when those dates are and ask them, like, when do I need to invoice you so I can get paid on that next pay run? So just expect that. So like when you get into more of the commercial space, payments are delayed. And that is one of the core challenges with doing like larger commercial jobs is cash flow management, because quite often it's net 30, net 60. And then even if they say it's net 60, don't expect to be paid for another month after that to be safe.
Right? Can you explain net 30, net 60?
So that's like, okay, the job is done today. Net 30 would be, I expect payment to be made in 30 days. Net 60s, 2 months. Net 90s, 3 months, right? But again, take those with a grain of salt, because they're not always organized. And again, a lot of them will play that game of just, take as long as possible. So you got to be on top of them, have that pre-negotiated, and then it's okay to follow up with people when they owe you money.
Yeah, and I think that Mary, I think you're actually being way too nice to him in this. It's like I told him late fees was kicking out for 14 days. Does that seem fair? How do you handle situations like this? I mean, number one, he whatever the situation is, he's not going to care about late fees, right? That's not what's going on. It's like you're gonna have to, in this situation, you're probably gonna have to call him every single day to try to get this money. That's in this situation. I would probably be showing up to the business where he is every single day until you kind of just need to be annoying in this situation if you want to actually see this money.
Yeah, 100%. And then I sometimes then on the reverse side of that, I get questions like, well, then, if the customer's not paying and I'm hounding them and I'm being super annoying, like, what if doesn't that reduce the amount of chances, or reduce the chances that I'm going to get more work from them? I'm like, well, why do you want more work from people who don't pay you? Right? Choose better customers, get better customers.
Yeah,
right? Because it's different if he's like, hey, I run a business. I process all my payments, and this conversation is ahead of time, process all my payments every 2 weeks. We print off checks. That's just our process. So if you invoice me by this date, you'll be paid by this date. That's different. That's just a communication. But if that wasn't set, then
the other risky thing here too is it sounds like the situation is he's moving and getting out of his lease. So what's happening to the business, right? And why the urgency around this and whatnot, that there might be something going on here. So, and then again, that is part of your initial estimate process as well, is if you're ever in a situation like this, and this is where you can ask for 50% of the payment up front or 100% of the payment up front, and just say, hey, in this situation when you're potentially closing down a business or whatever you're doing, it's like I need 100% of the payment on day one, or 50% on day one, and the other 50% on day two, and we wrap on day three, just given the situation. I've been here before. I know what it can be like, and it's not something that I'm willing to risk for my business. So if you want me to do it, I can, but these are the payment terms that I request. Again, normally in like residential, we do 20% upfront, 80% upon completion, but there's always acute case or like ad hoc cases where I'm going to switch that, right? If I have a weird vibe that I feel like someone, may not pay, like, in this situation, it's like I'm going to change those payment terms for these specific situations ahead of time.
Sure. Yeah. Big red flag there is if the customer, when you're, doing your initial sales discoveries and stuff, keeps telling you about all the problems they've had with contractors and how they haven't paid contractors for finishing work over and over again. That's a red flag. I just walk away from that one. Random little thing that popped into my brain. Because if there's one consistent factor there and it's the customer, chances are the situation is not going to be any different when you start working for them.
Yeah. There's nothing worse as a painting business owner when you're trying to like hunt down money and whatnot. You're not a collection agency. That's such a terrible part of that. So it's really important to set these expectations, especially when any amount of money is involved. People get weird about money, right? People get really weird about it, and so you gotta protect yourself, protect your downside, and set those expectations.
Yeah,
Mary, hopefully that was helpful. And sorry you're in that situation. That's never a fun situation to be in. So lots of positive vibes for you out there. But I would call
be polite, but
single day. Be polite, but absolutely set the boundary. You can have a way stricter thing than if late fees and whatnot on that as well. You can be way more assertive to that. People will respect that more too. Okay. Martha from London, Ontario. Hey, Brushbusters. I'm almost finished with the project, but the homeowner has been nitpicking everything from the start. He complains about how we move furniture, questions our prep work, and consistently hovers over painting. On top of that, the attitude is downright grumpy, which makes the whole experience stressful. At this point, I'm wondering, should I set firmer boundaries or just push through and keep my head down? How do you guys handle this? Oh, man. I feel like we got stories upon stories upon stories for this one. Yeah, what is one story to share with everybody where you've had a client like this?
Oh man. I mean, I've used this story before on podcasts. Well, actually, no, I'll use a different one. I'm trying to think of a specific
well,
one.
you got so much to pull from your rapid fire.
There's so many that it's just like,
well, so many until you learn the lessons of during the estimate process, you can start to call out these red flags before they happen, right?
Yeah, and that is a big part of it, right? So again, hearing what the customer is saying about previous contractors and stuff, you start to get like a sixth sense for these things. But I'll use one. One time we were painting the outside of a house, and the guy like literally pulled out a lawn chair and just sat there and watched my team. Right, like super passive aggressive, and at the end of the day, he would do his inspection, grab a roll of tape, and then do his own like green tape test, like put a piece of tape on all the deficiencies, even though it wasn't done.
Man, there's nothing worse than the green tape test that I would train our guys around to do that for inefficiencies. But when a customer like that picks up on that's what we do, and then you come back the next day when we're not even like started that section or whatever, and there's green tape all over the wall,
Yeah,
you're
like
like,
there's one coat on the wall. Like
oh
we know it's not done. There's one
yeah,
coat on it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Or we haven't even started painting this half of the wall yet.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's stressful, and it stresses your guys out. And this is where I led, like, going into that conversation. I'm like, look, I can't remember his name, but I was like, look, like, totally understand that you're wanting to make sure the quality is there. But, like, you hired us to do this project for you. So I would hope there's a semblance, like at least a little bit of trust there. What you're doing, like, while I can appreciate your concern for your home, what you're doing is you're actually stressing the crew out, and it's significantly increasing the likelihood that something is going to happen, because that's the environment that you're creating, right? I promise you we have systems in place to like catch these things. We're not done yet. We will do a walk around and inspection with you. But like, I need you to give my team some space. Otherwise, like, they're getting stressed out. It's not a great working environment. Like, can you imagine if someone sat behind you and just watched you do your job? It's kind of stressful, right? And they're like, yeah, I get that. Okay, cool. Like, what is, and then obviously there's a concern there if they're doing that, right? They don't trust you is ultimately what it is. So then you want to find out why. Why don't they trust you? Right? So I was like, I'm curious. You obviously have a concern here. Why, or like, what can I do to help put you at ease? I need to make sure that all the prep is done. I know I before it's all covered up, because I've had that happen before. That's why. So you've been burned by a contractor before. Okay. So now you can start to like diffuse the situation and come up with a plan of like, cool, would it put you at ease if we just took pictures of it for you? Or we'll do all the prep in these area, and then we'll come and have you inspect it before putting the top coat on. That leaves you to your day, right? You can go work on your car, your hobbies. Like, you paid us so you could buy back your time ultimately, right? You're not, it's a very expensive, boring TV show if you're just paying us to paint your house and you're sitting there watching, right?
Paying to watch some paint dry,
But ultimately, that means they don't trust you.
Yeah.
Right. There's some past stressful event, or I guess we could call it trauma to a certain extent, right? And you haven't done enough to put them at ease yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to build on that, in my business, like we have a clear, what we call like a no asshole policy. And if the client is doing these things, like, that is downright considered just being an asshole. So we don't work with people like that. And there's just like that firm expectation on that. So what I would do in this situation is I would completely pull the crew off the job. And then I would talk to the homeowner and say, hey, we need to sit down and have a conversation about how this is going, because how it's going right now is it's not workable, and it's not workable for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. Can you let me know what concerns that you have about each of these areas and what's really going on here? And so, like you were saying, getting to the root of what's going on and what his concerns are. But I'll go all the way to the extent of like, I will pull the crew completely off the job, and so that the customer knows that I am serious about this, and say, we have to have an alignment conversation, and we have to get aligned of how this is going to go for the rest of the job. Because if we don't get aligned here, I'm happy. You can pay us for the work that we've completed, and I'll refund and we'll cancel the contract for the rest, and we can shake hands and we can be friends. and like being that firm with it. Because what's going to happen if you continue on and going how it is, Martha, you're never going to get out of that job. That 4-day job is going to turn into an 8, 9, 10-day job. You're going to lose money on it, or hardly make any money on it, and it'll be one of the worst jobs ever if you continue to let things going how it is. So, like I said, I would just literally, even if it's the middle of the day, and I would say, crew, like, you're done for now. Like, go for lunch or something. Get off site and have that conversation and make sure that you're fully aligned. And then I would go as far, depending on where you're at with the job. If you're kind of getting close to the finish at this point, is again, before going any further, I would pull up the contract that we have and say, okay, here's our new conversation as of, recording this on March 11th. So March 11th conversation, we are aligned that this is going to happen, 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 this is going to happen. And at that point, the job is completed and we expect final payment at that time. And I would get them to sign off on that additional part of it. And I wouldn't do any further work until you get that alignment.
Yeah. Like you want to have a clear, like you're recalibrating and you have a clear plan to proceed, right? Like you're addressing their concerns and then you have a clear plan to proceed and a clear finish is what I'm hearing. It's like upon this trigger point, the job's done. There's no other like ways to evaluate this of like the job is indeed done and we expect payment. Honestly, like the best way to get it, like obviously you're in this situation now, right? So it's hopefully the job is still not going on by the time you hear this podcast episode. But moving forward is the best way to avoid this is or to deal with these situations is to completely avoid it to begin with, right? Again, as to our last conversation, setting expectations with clients, right? If you get a sense that they're kind of like this, which you do over time, you can just set very clear expectations around like, hey, if you notice things that you don't like or you feel we need to improve, let me know right away so I can come and address it. I will address it with my crew, right? And then just really listen to that feedback. It's very easy to get very defensive in these types of situations, but listen to the feedback of what they're saying. Like, well, like, I just don't trust that you guys are like, I have to feel like I have to be here to watch because I don't trust them. Why? Well, because when they showed up, it was an absolute gong show. Like it took 2 hours before everyone knew what colors were on the wall. The crew kit's a disaster. I have to clean up every day, right? Like not really instilling a lot of confidence in your painters. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a whole different situation. That's a self-inflicted wound because you didn't have a process or system and you blew all of the trust that you had built throughout the sales process. Obviously, they did trust you to a certain extent if you're there, if they hired you to paint the house. But you just blew all of that trust immediately when you showed up and your crew didn't know what they were doing. It was disorganized. Yeah. So fix that. Yeah. And that will make this problem, which is the side effect of that, disappear. Right?
Yeah, it's like what is the symptom versus the root? Make sure you tackle the root of the problem, and then this stuff will really start to go away.
Most of the time, this is a symptom of a root issue. Most of the time, some people are just wild.
There are the outlier cases that people can be crazy. Yeah. That's totally a thing. But yeah, for the most part, I think people are pretty reasonable, man.
Totally.
I think people are pretty reasonable, and
totally.
Yeah. I love it. Well, today, I mean, we discussed a lot. I think the more and more we get into this, we realize that, especially in such a service-based business, when you're dealing with personalities of clients, personalities of team members, personalities of just the community and what's going on and whatnot, it's so much more just human psychology and what understanding where people are coming from, understanding and empathizing from their situation and putting yourself in their shoes, whether it's putting yourself in their shoes and enrolling them into seeing how awesome and amazing their kitchen could feel. That would greatly outweigh any price that they could ever pay from it. Or it's understanding and being in your client's shoes if they are being nitpicky and understanding what's happening there. Or in the case of somebody not paying, what's truly going on there? What's the underlying thing that is going on there, and getting to the root? Because all of these things ultimately are symptoms. And if we just dig a little bit further, okay, what's actually the root of the issue going on here? And to get to the root, just ask further questions, inquire deeper, right? Like, and you don't be afraid to, like, in that situation with the picky client or the business owner, hey, like, what's really going on here, right?
I mean,
Ask that question.
that starts to get into like how to have critical conversations with people,
Yeah.
right? Um, which I just want to clarify, these are in-person conversations. Don't
Oh,
text conversations. It'll make it 10 times worse,
oh
especially
yeah,
when like you're dealing with upset customers and stuff. At the very least, call them right away to diffuse it and then show up in person to deal with it in person. Never text these types of conversations.
no. Texting or email in terms of like conflict management is like you never. Yeah, you nailed it off the head. I can't add any more value other than
Yeah,
do not do that. Have the conversation in person and make sure you get alignment, like get agreement, right?
totally. Just have a
Like,
human conversation. Most of the time that can diffuse most situations.
yeah, 100%. Well, man, this was super fun. Hopefully that helped everybody there. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Mary, and thanks,
And
Martha, for
Martha.
your guys' questions. That was awesome, Gav.
Yeah, thank you so much. And please do send us more letters. We love these letters.
See you guys soon.
See you later.